Hey everybody, Anthony Dodge, Maltrain Outsider, the American Outsider, a Knight of the Round Boy Table, and today a Pico Outsider. But we are looking at Pico's new items for 2026 catalog. And as always, this is a first impressions video. I am not here to talk you into buying or not buying. I'm just going through the catalog to show you what they're offering and giving my gut reactions on first view. We are not here to comment on quality or compare it to other companies. It's merely, this is what Pico's offering and what I like and what I see that reminds me of something. All right, so having said that, let's get to it. So the usual babble, electric locomotives, right into it. Class E19, obviously you can pause and read. I don't really know much about E19s. It's before the eras I tend to model. And so I'm not very familiar with that. But if you want to look at the bottom below the picture, I'll explain a couple of things. Pico usually does 3 versions of many of these locomotives. They'll have basically a stripped down non-digital version or digital version but without sound, a digital sound version in 2-rail, and then 3-rail is always going to be full digital with sound. Okay, and they'll give you the 3 different code numbers there, as well as they'll often include pricing, but not always. So an E19 looks kind of cool for its era and time. New molds, so they're not just repackaging an old one. And then they give you a choice of some cars that would have gone with it to form a proper prototypical consist. All right, a Class 215. Curiously enough, I have been looking at maybe getting a Class 215. But not this time around. I've got a couple other things I'm looking at. And again, some coaches to go with it. It's funny because they got that one car on the bottom left, and Metropolitan is also releasing a car with that, where it's kind of a Zilberling-alike car, but it's got the ocean blue and cream end to it on the control cab. All right. So another picture of the 215 and another potential set with it. So let's go back and look at it. I mean, in many cases, they don't even have CADs. They just have the prototype, so it's hard to comment. So I'll just zip through these if they don't have the actual model up. But a 215 looks like they're doing, yeah, these are different, 2 different versions of it. So maybe they'll even do it as a double consist, but all new molds. All right, here's a CAD drawing. This is a V90, the slightly longer. It's a 044 or whatever you want to call that wheel arrangement. It's got 4 axles, 8 wheels. Again, hard to comment on the model when it's just a CAD. And again, this is something I'm really noticing now. 3rd or 4th model in, and they're giving suggestions of Pico stock that would go with this model. So that's something kind of new here. All right, so the Class 296, which looks identical to the V90. They really seem to be the same thing, and they're following the same line. And more suggested, a lot of cool, the sliding tarpaulin car would be cool. And I just got a couple of those, and then the car below it. So, all right, new molds, new molds. The M44 diesel, I have, this is Hungarian. And a T455, which is Czech, or in this case, Czechoslovakian. And some more matching things. And a Polish SM41. And I will always say here while I'm at, Pico usually covers the most countries in their releases. I think they have more releases than Metropolitan or Rocco, but they also tend to span more countries. Especially Eastern European. It probably goes back to their days when they were an East German company. And here is a Danish MZ. We saw that Metropolitan's releasing a Danish MZ, and now so is Pico. Okay, I'm just reading this now. So apparently they're now teaming up with Metropolitan. They do this now and then. So Pico will release a DC version of it, and Metropolitan will release the AC version. So that's why we just saw a Metropolitan version of the same exact locomotive. It says there that Pico is making the DC version. The AC version will be Metropolitan. All right. And the same for this Czech diesel that I saw in the Miraklin catalog. So very, very interesting that these two companies are working together. You know, you feel a little bad because Miraklin is leaving out their own DC company, Trix. But the 65,000, class 65,000, which I thought was a cool looking diesel for its time and era. I like the Miraklin. Well, Miraklin had the model ready to go in their catalog. All right, so a steamer, a Polish TR12. I was just told today in my live stream to look at a TR12 for some reason. And again, a mix of cars to go with it. This is very, in a way it's interesting, but I think I'm just going to focus on the model at hand and not the cars at hand. And a Czech Class 210. I still consider it sort of a shunter as opposed to a full freight hauler. It's more of a, to me, it looks more like a shunter. Class 210 or Class 110, because it says both there, so I don't know which one's more accurate. And here's the Class 210. So I'm assuming this was probably a Class 110 because it says on the official things a Class 110, but it up there, the 210 and the 110. Kind of blue, I mean rusty gold here, but all pictures. So it's hard to comment on a model, you know. The picture is fine, but you want to see how the model looks. And here are some CAD renderings. Class 91, a 335 one, which is looks basically like the same thing in German, a Class 91. Czech, a Class 335. Dutch, an RH 75, aka a BR 91. And then an Austrian Class 691. So really it's the same loco, just 4 different countries. All right, what do we have here? Now, at least one we get a picture of a model. We got a CAD of a Class 62. Okay, I have not seen Class 62, so that's kind of a new look for me. It's a it looks like it's a 464 wheel arrangement, but that's a CAD. Next to it, we got a Class 91 from DRG, Era 2. That's interesting, because we just saw all these little Class 91s, and now you've got a big Class 91. Interesting wheel alignment there. And then Polish TK 48, PKP, and a TK T48. So very interesting. All right, a Class 103. I do like 103s a lot, but again, CAD, hard to comment on the model. And then a Class 110. And it looks like they're doing variations of the 110. And then a Class 139 in green. So again, if this is your era and you like it, it's great, but I'd like to see what the model looks like. I really think you should have at least a prototype of the model before you go to catalog. But are they, because most of these are all new molds. They're saying new molds, and this is expert range, which is their top range. Now, this is a model variation. So in other words, they've released this, but this is another one. It's a Class 111 in the S-Bahn livery. Somewhere down the line, I'll probably pick these up in the S-Bahn cars that go with it, but I'll get the Miraklin one. That's a little bit older, usually needs converted. And then right below it, Class 114. And then a Class 243, which would be East German, because in West Germany and modern Germany, that would be a 143 because it's electric. And it looks like a 143 because I have a 143. So again, the Class 114, which actually... did Miraklin release one last year, 2 years ago? I wouldn't mind picking up a Class 114 because our past trip to Germany, we saw some 114s, and I think one of the regional trains we took was pulled by a 114 when we were in Frankfurt. I think it was Frankfurt. All right, and then a Class E32. Can't tell you much about that. Model variation, so these are all just retoolings, new liveries of pre-existing models. Class 151. Now that's a model, and I like that. That looks cool. 151s apparently are very popular right now because Roco, Miraklin, and here Pico have all been releasing 151s the last couple of years. And that's a cool color because that is a common color I saw sort of a post-war into the 60s coloring on locomotives. And I've got cars that go with it, but I don't have a loco in that livery, so to speak. Yeah, that 152 there is interesting CAD. We'll see what comes of that. Electric class 184 and a 184.1. And another color that was of a very specific era in Germany that I don't have any models of that color. I've seen some E41s, I want to say, in this color of livery with a lot of models. And again, I've got some cars that go with it, so it'd be cool to have a loco of that era that matches them as well. But they're, you'll never have it all. Okay, we've got a crocodile, class 194, and then a class 244 and an E52. And at least now we're getting true models and just variations of existing models. Again, these are not my era. The one on the bottom left is East German, clearly. But, yeah, not my era. Not anything I'm specifically looking at, but you guys could check it out. All right, some Belgian. We got a Belgian Class 187, which is a newer variation of the Trax 2. I've got a Class 187. And then you got a Vectron, a 7193 for Belgium. I believe that's Belgium. I think that's the Belgian flag there. But that's kind of cool. And, of course, you're going to have lots of Vectrons, Pico and Rocco especially. They're just going to release lots of Vectrons in a lot of different liveries. So we got a Polish, the Baltic PKP, and IC. And then we have the 383, which is also Polish. And I think they designate one as passenger and one, 193 is passenger and 383 is freight. Because you can see it says PPP cargo. Oh, PKP cargo. All right, some more pictures. Austrian Class 1067, and then a variation of the Austrian Class 1067, which would be in green, and then an Austrian Class 1110. Sort of an Austrian classic in its day. You see all these rusty gold pictures of them here where they're heavily used, and that says, okay, well, the model looked like that. All right, what do we got here? Some more Austrians. So a Class 1018. Got a friend that was looking for a Class 1018 and the 1041. They would be happy with either of those. A Dutch Class 1008 or 1008, and a Class 1000 for the Dutch. So got a couple of Dutch. There's model variation and a totally new for 2026. But at least we got 3 models there you can see. All right. Czech Republic, a Class 230. That's an Era 6. That's a newer guy there. That's kind of cool looking. I like the livery and the different shades of blue there. And then a Class 240 and a more classic color variation for the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia. Because it says it's Era 6, but that would be Czech Republic or Czechia as it's now called. And then definitely Czechoslovakia. You've got the Class E669 and then a Class 181. All right, more Polish. So definitely a lot of Polish and a lot of Czech this year. So a Class 181, kind of cool looking livery there. A EP09, which is an intercity loco. So I assume that's a commuter intercity. Then down below, a couple of interesting green colors here. And I have said it in the past, and Pico really brings it out. A lot of really cool looking Polish liveries. So you got a couple there. The EU07 from Era 5 and a 3E1 from Era 4. And then a ET21, which would be Era 3, so going back. But again, a CAD drawing. Now this one, it's an interesting livery for the 201E277 PL Visco. And again, I have no idea what those mean. And by saying that, I'm sure there's 3 or 4 people who will explain what a PL Visco is. But there you have it. Oh, this is kind of cool. Have a friend that I haven't talked to in a while that's really big into Polish trains, and they would probably love this one. The PKP Cargo ET41. This is Era 6. And then a Hungarian 431 of the Magyar. I don't know what the AV part is, but the M is Magyar because that is Hungarian. So more of the expert level. We got a Class 232, which means it's a Ludmilla Class 232. And then another Class 110, except this is listed as Era 6. So this is obviously a sort of, I don't want to say it's a museum loco, but obviously a loco of an older style that's been brought back, or in this case, they call it a locomotive, but it looks almost like a rail car. All right, let's keep going. So we might have gone into their basic line here. We got a Class 248. So Pico has already jumped into Class 248. So we got a few of them here, or variations of it, but the same design, just different nomenclatures depending on the country. So a 248 SETG, I like that. That's kind of sharp, but I really like the Presnitzbahn here in the blue. Although I think either Rocco or Märklin have already done that one, but that's very sharp. I like that a lot. And then an Austrian version, Sternhaferl, which I don't know what their liveries look like, but obviously you're going to get that. So looks kind of cool, all white. All right, a DE18 for Swiss, kind of thrown in the middle here. Maybe should have thrown that picture up with all the other little diesel shunters and movers that they had of a similar style. Now, this is a Class 247. I don't know the difference between 247, 248, 249 specifically. But this is a Class 247. I kind of like that livery, the Romberg Zerse. Okay, East German Class locomotive, the 200,001. Again, computer aid drawing, and just, I forget what they called that sort of style, the design style of that era. Just, I remember growing up and my older relatives had like end tables and everything. You know, it's not Art Nouveau, but you know, they just all had these same shapes that you see in. It was just sort of influenced by the space age and that, and yet still kind of old-fashioned. All right, sorry about that, rambling. A Class 228 from Deutsche Bahn Cargo Logistics Rail. It's from Germany, not Deutsche Bahn. My apologies. Kind of interesting. It's an interesting livery, and obviously of an era. It says it's Era 6, but again, there's something about it that just feels very retro about it. So I don't know if this is just an older locomotive reimagined in the modern era. All right, there's another Class 228, which is Era 5, which is, you know, I would have, if you just showed me a picture of this loco without telling me an era, I would have guessed Era 4. East German, 228, interesting. Another Class 211 diesel shunter, and some more Class 211 for Denmark. So we got a German, Denmark, and then a Class 213 for Germany. Again, all variations of the same thing, just different liveries. All right, a Class 219, a German Class 219 from Deutsche Bahn. Not seeing a lot of Class 219s. And then here's a Class 679 from the Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia, I should say. It looks a little bit like a Ludmilla itself. And then here's a Class 220, and Märklin is also releasing a Class 220 in this paint scheme. Well, let me correct that. Märklin's releasing a 221. And so there is a 220 in the old classic red, and then a 221, which I have a 221 in that ocean blue and beige livery from ESU. All right, some more diesel locomotives. A diesel switching engine, RH600, a Dutch RH500, and another Dutch RH500 in a different variation. All CAD drawings here. Some of these longer diesel shunters, you know, where it's got two sets of two axles. Several ones earlier in the book, and then one a couple of pages back from Switzerland, and now a bunch more And they all look basically the same. So you got a G1206, a G1206. Well, they are all, in this case, a G1206 from the Netherlands. And then another Dutch one that is a 6400 rail ion. And again, looks exactly like the 1206. So I'm sure there are little nuances people more in the know. But again, I'm here first impressions of the models, and unfortunately we're getting mostly photographs of the prototypes or CADs. Okay, we're on to Italy now. So we got a few Italians, a D445, a D445 in the Trenitalia livery. And then the second series, the Navetta. And another one sort of in a Trenitalia livery from Era 6. Okay, another 669 diesel locomotive for the Czechoslovakia. And now a French diesel. It's called a BR 60,000, but it looks a lot like those classes I just looked at a couple of pages back. These 1206s and the 6400. Now, obviously, 6006 and a 6400 from the Dutch. I'm assuming they're very much related. They're looking a lot alike to me. I apologize if that offends anybody. A Polish SM31. That's an interesting, very boxy one there. SM42, another SM42 in a different livery, both Polish, and two more Polish locomotives, an SU46 and an SU45. Very interesting. Look like early predecessors to like a Class 66 or a British Class 59, but obviously probably not. Yeah. At least we got the one model there, which is very colorful, kind of a cool livery. And then the SU45 prototype there. And yeah, these guys release a lot. So an S200 from CTL, so Polish. That ST44 is kind of cool looking. It's an Era 5, but I like the livery on it. And then the CTL R4C1. Again, CTL, Rail 4. Little interesting chemical locomotive. And now, can't forget the Americans. And we've got the Denver and Rio Grande modified diesel locomotive. 4001, a 4003, and then a 9022. All American various lines, Southern Pacific, and a couple that are Denver and Rio Grande Western, I think that is. And then some rail cars, multiple units. So you got a Class 798, the Ulmer Spatz from Era 5. So that must have been a little regional, sort of a regional special. Okay, interesting. We got the Polish multiple unit at EN 57, which they say is Era 6, but boy, that looks very retro. So again, I wonder if that is a sort of a retro brought back and being used for special things. But here's what I'm going, here is a Rostock S-Bahn. I've actually ridden that. And it's a 442, which I'm really excited about because I had a Pico 442 and we burned something out on it and nobody can fix it. The decoder can be read, but it's not functioning. And so there's something on the circuit board that obviously is wrong and we can't find what it is. I need a new 442. That's kind of cool in that it's Rostock. And maybe I'd buy two and trade out the shell. Because they're saying this is new 2026, but I'm assuming it's new livery, not a new mold. So it's probably the same basic format. But yeah, that's pretty cool. But they're saying this is a 5-car. Because the one I've got is a 3-car. Okay, enough about that. All right, hey, here you go. A BR 101, a classic. And this is the same thing. This is the Märklin, and I believe these are just the metronome coaches repainted. Because this is the DC version. Pico did the DC version. Not the metronome. I'm sorry, the Senator. Nope. Take three. This is the DC version of the Metropolitan repainted into IC. Maryland's doing the AC. And I really like these. I think they look cool, but at the same time, this is not legitimate IC coaches, which has me a little bit of like, maybe not. So Maryland's doing the AC version and Pico's doing the DC version, the 2-rail version. All right, what do we got here? Passenger coaches, passenger cars. All right, we got a conversion type ABYG, then a BD4YG, and different classes there. Again, it's nice to see them all. At least you can see the one and then more CADs, but you can see the color in the CAD is nothing like what the model actually looks like. All right, the Halberstädter passenger cars. One of their names. So you got second class, first, second class mix, and then the control cab. We got another control cab, but in another livery. That's kind of cool. And then passenger cars from Era 4 in that style. With alternate numbers. Yeah, just interesting colors to say the least. And 2 conversion cars with the red biscuit on the blue, and then some retouched image. So it's not even a new picture. It's Austrian. Interesting. It is an Austrian. It is OBB, but it looks just like the ICs of Deutsche Bahn. Interesting. All right, some Czechoslovakian coaches. Including the blue, that would be an interesting consist with 2 cars on the top, and then you got a 3-car set below. So that would actually make a very interesting train there. All right, another control car, cab control. The Moskva Express. And a couple of coaches to go with it. That would make a nice consist, those 3 cars. The control cab and the 2 coaches there, a second class and then a first, second class. That'd make a nice consist. And then a couple of Polish cars. You got a dining car from Era 5 and then the yellow passenger cars, a couchette, service couchette car. Interesting. And a lot more CAD, so you could just kind of stare at them. I'm not going to read all the different type of coaches there. You can just see it. The bi-level double-decker from Poland. But yeah, all Polish. So wow, very heavy. I thought they were doing a lot of Polish last year, but this is very heavily Polish. Nothing wrong with that, just pointing out. It's very, lot of different variations. And the Polish have a lot of colorful cars, so good on them. All right, so here we go with French. I almost said those were Swiss because the first car is a dining car for Switzerland, but I'm the Co-Rail. Those are interesting. And those look very similar to the current Swiss cars of their IC EC Expresses, but those are French and very cool looking. Cool. That would make a nice consist if you do French trains. All right, now it's time for freight. Telescoping coil cars. And just some very, very interesting typos because they got the telescoping coil cars here set at 2. And then you can see here, those are not telescoping coil cars. That's something else, but it doesn't say what they are. Obviously, they're some gondola, some kind of gondola. And then you got a couple of graffiti taken gondolas there. EOS gondolas with loads and graffiti. So just some typos here. All right, so retouched images, which means they just took an older picture and changed the color and their thing to it, but a lot of Polish. Some cool boxcars, and then a double set of gondolas. And more Polish cars. So these are obviously some of the cars they were showing earlier to go with some of those trains. Flat cars and tankers. I don't know if any of the tankers stand out specifically. I mean, I kind of like the 406R one there, middle right. And then, of course, a DB Schenker. All right, Swiss and Italian, Ambrosio, Intermodal. And then some German hoppers. I kind of like those. Those look kind of cool. And then some with opposite numbers in a different color. So, interesting. Okay. And some Dutch hoppers of that same style we were just looking at. So obviously they're taking a mold and just repainting it for a couple of Polish. The Waskosa, I kind of like that light tanker. That's kind of cool. Could throw that. The Schroeder and Klaus, throw that with my tanker train. Oh, that's interesting. Siemens Calcia. That's a French one from Era 5. And then Hopper Car, the Zernini from Czech Republic or Czechia. Yeah, because it's Era 6. And a military tank transport for Switzerland. Cool. Let's see. Dutch sliding tarpaulin cars. And then a Swiss one. Sliding wall box car for Belgium. And then a Swiss cargo. A Austrian Armois tanker. And then a couple of Algeco for France. So you got Belgian, Austrian, Swiss, and Dutch and French. You had a lot of them there. All right, so the 14th open house at Pico, and we just saw this same train, the Leonard Weiss version, in the Märklin, of course. Down below here, it says the AC version will be released by Märklin. So Trix is getting kind of screwed out of some vehicles and sets here because Märklin is splitting it with Pico. All right, so now we're into the hobby level. So now we got a whole bunch more, and this is their lower range. This is their basic range. So these would all be relatively inexpensive, and yeah, I won't go any further. So a Class 145, Class 185, and then a Taurus or an E64. I like that one. That's a City Jet livery. I'd like to get a City Jet, and that's a really cool looking one, but I want it in the higher level. A couple of different 185s, and then it just says a Trax Press 6. So interesting to say the least. All right, some more of those diesels, G1700s in German, Austrian, and then finally some steamers again. A Dutch steamer, that's interesting, Class 55. A German steamer in that gray, a G71. A Belgian version of it in that very nice Belgian green. And then again, looks to be basically the same in the Hungarian version, although it's got a totally different number, but it really looks like the same loco, except the front smokestack looks a little taller in the Hungarian version. All right, so now some starter sets. So a Polish starter set with one of those diesel shunters and a couple of passenger cars. They say that's Era 5. Okay. A Dutch little dude with a small 040 steamer and a couple of small passenger cars. A Hungarian starter set, very interesting. Hungarian starter set with the diesel M62 and some of that. But the one I'm looking at here is the Hungarian Taurus. It's Era 5, but that's a very cool looking. I like that. That's a really cool looking set with both the Taurus and the passenger coaches. That's one of the sharper Hungarian model trains I've seen come out of Pico. I like that set a lot. Not that I would buy it. I don't need a Hungarian train right now, but it's very cool. I like that a lot. All right, and some more cars from the hobby range. We got an Eastern passenger car and then a Czech. And then a second class Czech. Is that a new livery they're running? Because that's kind of cool. An old Czech or Czechoslovakian bi-level. And then some City Jet bi-levels. That's kind of cool. Era 6. Those probably go with that Taurus in the hobby level. And then some hobby level freight cars. I'll let you guys just check them all out. And some beer wagons. A couple of those are kind of cool. Various container wagons. I do like the Italian one with the two MSC bits on it. I wouldn't mind a couple of more MSC containers. Two Italian, one Dutch, the Swiss, and some tankers, short tankers, small tankers, Polish, Czech, and Swiss. And that's it. Now they're going to talk about their digital system. Oh, wait. Apparently I got ahead of myself. So here is a Desero without the double deckers in the middle in the Baldwin Wallace. If I don't get the 4-car Desero that Meriklin released in this, then I would look at getting a 2-level. They got a couple of different variations of it. And then, the Young Socialist East German double-decker train set. Kind of cool-looking cars. And then some old Belgian and French passenger cars. Those are kind of cool. I like those in the hobby level. For the hobby level, those are very sharp. And a whole bunch more. A railway post office car for Deutsche Bahn of Era 5. Towards the end of the career of the Ocean Blue and Beige. And just, a lot of stuff here. There's so much to take in. It's hard to look at it all. An acid car for Austria, Era 3, and then a bunch of gondola cars for different countries. You got Polish, Belgian, French, Dutch, German, Polish again. Take your pick. Now, it's funny, these Taos 894 cargos, I just bought a couple of those in Germany, Meriklin versions of these, but it's the same thing. Waskosa hopper car, some more beer wagons and such. Hungarian one, and then more Czech, East German, Polish. There's just a lot here, and it's a big magazine or catalog. I'm just going to let you guys look at this rather than try to point it out. A cement car, cement silo. A couple of interesting tankers there at the top as well, as long as the Pico Car of the Year, Pico 2026. And get your fan shop. Now, last time I looked, okay, a couple of basic starter sets. You got a 218 with some graffiti cars, or you can get it with a 2016 Taurus. Although I don't know if they call it a Taurus when it's a 2016. But it's the same thing, just different version. All right, so that is the Pico catalog. I know I went through fast, but when you got a lot of CADs and a lot of photographs, it's kind of hard to give you a gauge. And still, it took almost 40 minutes to go through all this. So on that note, I'm going to thank you for tuning in. I hope you saw some things you liked or curious about. Again, I just wish Pico, I said it last year with their catalog, they need to wait until they have some working prototypes or something that really shows how the model's going to look. Obviously, you try to get the model to look as close to the prototype as possible, but there are clear differences, like we saw where the one case where they had the one car as a model, and then they had a couple of CADs that where the rendering was very different. It really doesn't help me see the model when it's all CAD drawings or photographs of the prototype. You get an idea what's coming, but until you see the model, you don't know. So until next time, I'm going to say Auf Wiedersehen, tschüss, and happy trains. Take care, everybody.